Uh, okay, hi everyone. So we are very happy to have Tuheen here, and he has come with Francois, so we are double lucky. And but Tuheen is going to give the talk. Tuheen was a student when I first met him many years ago, and so we worked together on the rotating universes, and we wrote a paper together. That was his first paper that he wrote as a student, and he loved it so much that he decided to continue doing CMP. And so he got his PhD at IUCA, and we moved to Paris to work on the farm. And so he has been working on the dust polarization stuff and cleaning the maps, right? That he will tell us more about, and he will tell us more about dust. And now everyone knows that dust is very important if you want to do good science.
Thank you, Amir, for the kind introduction. So first, good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, I'd like to thank CETA for giving me the opportunity to present Planck results. So today I will talk about dust emission from Planck. And this talk is on the behalf of Planck collaboration. So the beautiful picture you see in the background is dust emission coming from the galactic plane. And these lines are basically the structure of the magnetic field. So we can produce these beautiful pictures with Planck. So this is the summarize of what I'm going to present. So what we learned about the dust emission from the Planck data. It includes both intensity and polarization. So it has two parts of what things we are learning from Planck. One is the astrophysical part, and one is the part which is related to the cosmology. So if you are a cosmologist, so the things which you want to learn about the dust emission is in their talk. I'm talking both in terms of intensity and polarization. So in more general terms, I will talk about the spatial distribution of dust emission, how it is distributed, and the polarization properties of it, we are first measuring it from Planck. Then the spectral properties of the dust emission. So because with Planck we have a multi-frequency coverage, so we can measure the spectral dependence of Planck. And the next thing is the statistical properties, which is very new. So it's important for if you're looking for primordial B modes. So what are the statistical properties of the dust emission, and can we use this information to clean the data to get to the primordial B modes? Since this talk is on the behalf of Planck collaboration, so I need to thank all the first to thank all the Planck collaboration funding agency and all the participating institutes. So a bit of Planck. So Planck is a third generation satellite after COBE and WMAP, and is 10 times more sensitive than WMAP. So it has an angular resolution which goes from 5 arc-minute to 30 arc-minute. And it has huge wavelength coverage from 30 to 857 gigahertz. So it was launched in 2009, and the Planck polarization data is expected to be released by the end of this month. So the first data came out in 2011 when Planck released this map. So it is a multi-frequency sky observations from 30 to 857 gigahertz. So the blue stuff what you are seeing here is dominated by dust emission, and only at the high latitude you start seeing the CMB and the cosmic infrared background. So to get to the CMB, it is very important to remove all this stuff which is dust, and to remove we need to understand all the properties of the dust emission. In 2013, we separate out these maps into 9 frequency channels. So it goes from 30 to 857 gigahertz. And soon there will be similar kind of maps for the polarization. So what we are seeing is basically at high frequency channels from 353 to 857, it is totally dominated by dust emission. You hardly see some of the CMB here. And at low frequency, the 30 and 44 gigahertz, it is dominated by synchrotron emission. And this frequency like 100 and 143, which is which is very sensitive in terms of Planck sensitivity. but still you don't see the CMB in the whole sky. It is also dominated by dust emission. So to get to the CMB, actually we need to clean these maps, and there is no single frequency in the sky where you can just observe the CMB and forget about the dust emission. So this shows that why the dust emission is important and why you need to study these properties. So the rest of the talk is about the properties of the dust emission, which I'm going to talk about. So this dust emission is basically the small grains which are spherical in shape, and these are spinning in the or precessing in the direction of magnetic field. So by studying the spectral dependency or the dust emission, we can get to the dust optical properties and its composition. And also by getting the polarization of the dust emission, we get to the magnetic field topology. So this is the basic idea. And what we actually measuring with the Planck polarization data is this Q and U Stokes parameter. So from Q and U, we can derive what is the polarized intensity of the dust emission. We can derive what is the polarization fraction, which is P over I, and the polarization angle of the dust emission. So what we are measuring is not the three-dimensional magnetic field, but the projection of the three-dimensional magnetic field on the plane of the sky, which is this B perpendicular component. And this B perpendicular component is perpendicular to the polarization direction. So directly from the data, we get this polarization angle, and if you rotate by 90 degree, we get the this B perpendicular direction, which is the projection of the B field. And also, additionally, we get this polarization fraction and the polarization intensity of the dust. So this is just, you don't need to assume anything or model anything. It's just directly the product of the Planck observations, basically the Planck polarization data. So start with the intensity one. So the far infrared sky, what we observe with Planck from 353 and above, it is totally dominated by dust emission. And with Planck, what we are seeing is the bigger picture of the distribution of matter in the galaxy. And in the details are provided by the Herschel observation. So in this picture, I am showing just one field of view, which is the Polaris flare region. And if you zoom on it and look at the Herschel image, there are a lot of filamentary and complex structure in this dust map. So with dust, it's very complicated, but with the Planck, we see the all sky view of it in the full sky. So this dust emission is basically scale invariant structure. So the power spectrum is like a constant number. It has a constant slope. So it does not matter whether you look at the large scale or small scale, you see the same power spectrum. And this dust emission has a high dynamic range. So it goes 3 orders of magnitude from the plane to the high latitude sky. So it's very bright in the galactic center. And with Planck, since we have multi-frequency coverage, we can use the spectral energy distribution to extract the information about the dust composition and the excitations. So let's start with the spatial distribution. So to see how the dust is distributed over the sky, we can actually take one of the high frequency map for intensity, say 545 or 857 gigahertz. It basically tells us how the dust is distributed. So it's more dominant towards in the galactic plane because you have a lot of stuff in the galactic plane, and it's a bit fainter at the high latitude sky. So basically, we can look at the intensity map and see which regions are the clean region of the sky. And it's similar true for polarization, which is now with Planck, we are getting this 353 Stokes Q and U maps. So these maps are a bit noisy, but in this frequency, the CMB is subdominant. So whatever structure we are seeing in these maps are coming from the dust emission. So this is the spatial distribution of the dust. We also can measure what is the polarization intensity of the dust and the polarization fraction of the dust. So in this scale, it is 20%. So you can see there are a lot of regions which are red. So what we Planck, we are coming as that the dust it can be very highly polarized. This was not expected. People used to believe that the dust is like 3 or 4% polarized, but now we see in the Planck data the dust which is like 20% polarized. But there are low polarization fraction regions in the sky, which is in the galactic plane, because there are a lot of depolarization effect going on there. And then we look at this high polarized regions like Fan and Auriga region. So here it is, this is Aquila Rift region, where it is very highly polarized. Also, we can make nice pictures like in background is the dust intensity map with the magnetic field lines. So we can basically measure the polarization angle and rotate by 90 degrees to compute what is the magnetic field direction. So it basically gives the information about the polarization angle. But for cosmologists, what is interesting is what is the polarization fraction. So we take maps because the maps are a bit noisy, so we smooth to 1 degree resolution. And what is shown here is the distribution of the polarization fraction as a number of pixels. So if we take the whole sky, it can go, the polarization fraction can go up to 20%. And then if we look at the galactic plane or the inner galactic plane, it is less polarized. And this is at 1 degree resolution. So if we go to from 1 degree to 15 minute, so as we go to higher and higher resolution, the dust polarization fraction can go up to 30%. So it seems that dust is highly polarized than what it was anticipated before. So we trace down what is how this polarization fraction, it varies with the column density. So at high column density, basically it has a lot of scatter at low column density with a mean value which is around 7 or 8%. And then it falls off. And this, at high column density, this decrease of polarization fraction is basically coming from this interpretation that there is a loss of grain element in the shielded interior of the clouds. So the basic idea to get from this slide is to take that the polarization of the dust can be very high. Also,
What was the color showing here?
So this is the density of points. So the red means there are more points here, and the blue is points which is less. So this is the threshold of 20%. So there are less points which goes above 20%. But the mean is around 7% there. So another thing what we compute is the dispersion of the polarization angle. So basically we thought that all the polarization is coming from intensity filaments, but it's not the case. So by plotting this dispersion function, what we are getting is that there are a lot of filamentary structures which is produced by magnetic field, and there is no intensity counterpart of it. So if the field is very ordered, it gives delta psi of 0. But if there is a big change in the polarization angle, it produces this filamentary structure. So all this spaghetti kind of structures is basically coming because there is a change of magnetic field. So this is everything is done with just one frequency. For the polarization, it is like 353 gigahertz. But what we can extra do is extract the spectral information of the dust emission.
Before you leave that last subject,
Yes.
so you can measure the diffraction field. You're looking at the dust emission here.
Yes.
So you're going to measure it from the synchrotron. Right?
Yes.
And to what extent are the two being cross-compared?
So we compared the polarization angle from the synchrotron and the dust. So it has a correlation, but it's not exactly it's not the same. So it's a bit shifted for the synchrotron polarization angle compared to the dust emission.
Do you have any sense to which this represents different weightings along the line of sight? If you have confidence that there's one clump that's contributing to most of the signal in both cases, that there's a better correlation?
Yeah, because it's not tracing the same thing. So dust is local structure which is coming from our own galaxy, and the synchrotron is this cosmic ray electron. So, but in the next section, we study what is the correlation of the synchrotron with the dust emission. So how much the synchrotron emission is correlated with the dust. So next thing is the spectral energy distribution, spectral properties of the dust emission. So can we use this multi-frequency information to extract some of the spectral properties? Because dust is very bright at the high frequency. So if we know the spectral properties, we can extrapolate it to any frequency we want. So start with the intensity results. So what we do is, so the dust emission which is at high frequency is basically coming from big grains which are in thermal equilibrium with the interstellar radiation field. And it can be modeled with this black body spectrum. So it has these three parameters. It's a just analytical model which has a beta, temperature, and tau. So we take Planck frequencies, three high frequencies, like 353, 545, 857, and 100 micron, and we fit this this model and derive this basically these three parameters. So what I'm showing here is the map of tau, which is basically the map of the galaxy star reservoir of the star formation. So at high latitude, it basically shows that the medium is atomic phase, and then with traces matter which is in molecular phase, which has a CO or like CO counterpart.
And what data do you use for the 2000?
So it's the IRAS 100 micron data. It's just, I put it at 3000 gigahertz.
So, ThinkBiner and company push,
Yes.
for logical reasons, to temperature model.
Yes.
How is that is good a fit?
Yeah, because they're trying to fit, everything down to 100 gigahertz. So there is a one single black body does not work.
Yeah.
But here we are just fitting till like 353 gigahertz. So we don't extrapolate.
I'm saying this another way. There's a logic to the two-temperature model.
Yeah, because
Not there associated.
yes, because one temperature model, it does not fit the whole frequency range from 100
The
to.
question is that this provides an absolutely great fit, this beta D.
Yes. But
what's the relative quality of the two-temperature fit with the fixed data between?
yeah, but this is only valid from 353 to above. So if you want to fit all the frequency from 100 gigahertz to 100 micron, it does not fit.
Which doesn't fit?
This single black body spectrum. So,
Okay, good.
so you need another temperature or another beta model to fit the data.
But it looks like it's a good fit in that insert.
I know that.
No. So no, in this fit, we just use these four frequencies. So from 353 gigahertz to above. So these points are not used for the fit. So this is described in this paper, P0 Planck.
Still seems to work.
Still,
I mean, if that.
No, it's not the. It's just that is not the fit. It's just showing the beta, the average value of beta and the temperature, which is derived from the fit. So single black body does not work to fit all the frequency.
The black points in this inside plot, are those data points?
It's not the data points. Yeah. So we also get get the beta and the temperature map. So the beta map and temperature map has a lot of fluctuations. So basically the temperature which is lower here is showing the molecular clouds, and the beta map is steeper close to the plane, and then it has flatter in the outer galaxy, and is very flat in the SMC region. This is a small Magellanic Cloud region, and this is already found earlier by in the Planck 2011 results. So this beta, what we are measuring is the spectral index between 353 and 100 micron. So it cannot be extrapolated to lower frequencies.
I'm sorry, what's the temperature range of your dust? Because it's just cut off there.
Yeah, so I think the average is 19 Kelvin. So it goes to 18 to 24. So we start with this analytical model, but we also fit this Drain and Lee 2007 model. So it's a more physical model compared to just the gray body with three parameter fit. So this model has various parameters, and then it has, from the Kingfish samples, they already have constraint on some of the parameters. So at the end, we are fitting just for 3 parameters, which is equivalent to this beta and temperature and the tau. So this U mean, so U is the one of the parameter in this model, and it is equivalent to the temperature of the in the gray body fit, And then we measure this surface brightness, which is equivalent to the, is proportional to the tau map. So what in this plot it is showing is the fit till, so this is till 353 gigahertz. So this is 100 micron, 857, 545, and 353 gigahertz. So these points are used to fit the data, and the blue points are basically coming from Derby observations at 100, 140 to 40 micron. So this model is give a very good fit, and even it predicts what is the Derby flux should be, so which is on the top of the model. So basically we can model the dust to very high accuracy from 353 and above. And why we want to do that? Because so this is the spectral dependence of intensity foregrounds, and I talk about polarization later. So 353 and above, everything is below. So you need to just subtract the CMB, and you're totally dominated by dust emission. But to extrapolate to these frequencies, you need to worry about all these components like synchrotron, spinning dust, free emission. And it's a bit complicated to just model the dust without worrying about these other components. So one solution is to model everything at one go, which Commander is doing, and is going to release the data. But like simple extrapolation is not useful. So what we need is some kind of template so that we can, if you have a good template, we can actually do the cross correlation all the to the frequency down to 20 gigahertz and extract the information about the dust. So this is for the intensity. For polarization, it's very simple case. So we have just three components, which is thermal dust, synchrotron, and CMB. So we assume that the free is unpolarized. The spinning dust polarization is also very low. So we can take 353 and other frequencies basically. So one other thing which is interesting is what is the spectral spectral index of the dust emission between 100 and 353 gigahertz, because this is the frequency where the CMB is dominant, and we want to get the good feel of what is the spectral index there. So what we do is we take an ancillary data which is coming from gas H1 data, and we're looking at the south pole. So this is center at the southern galactic pole, and you can see that there is a very good correlation between 857 and gas H1 data. So basically we can use this as a template and cross correlate with all the frequencies. So anything which is uncorrelated with this H1 data, it will just filter out, like if there is a CO or synchrotron or anything, and we get the spectral index of the dust emission. So this, again, in this frequency we do the modified blackbody fit, and this is the beta and the temperature map we get, and the beta map is now is like 1.5. So the previous map I showed you, actually forgot to mention it, but the beta map here has a median value of 1.6. So you can see that the beta what we are getting here is different from what we get from the far infrared. So one single gray body fit does not work actually. So you need either 2 beta or 2 temperature model. But the spectral index is very stable, which is like close to 1.5. And the temperature is close to 20 K. So this is at the high latitude, and but we are also interested in what is going on in the intermediate latitude. So this is the red region where we are concentrating on our estimation of the spectral index. So, but this time we cannot use H1 data because H1 is correlated to the gas phase, which is in atomic phase. So we need to rely on other tracer. So what we do here is we use 353 gigahertz as a tracer of dust emission, and then we use to get rid of synchrotron and free, we take another ancillary data from like 408 megahertz synchrotron data and the H alpha map, and we do 3 template fit. But at 353 gigahertz there is still some CMB, so we do kind of color ratio to get rid of CMB. And this is the histogram of beta, what we get in this intermediate latitude. So it is also centered around 1.5 with a very tiny error bar, which is 0.1, sorry. So what we are coming out from this analysis is the beta of the intensity is very stable in this frequency from 100 to 353, and it has a median value of or the mean value of 1.5. We can extrapolate this analysis to lower frequencies. So not to stop at 100, we can extrapolate to lower frequencies till 20 gigahertz. So what we are finding is that the dust actually falls off, and then it starts rising up. And this rising up is basically coming from spinning dust emission. So, so here we are trying to model the spinning dust with two different models.
For the non-experts in the room,
Yes.
can you explain how you know it's spinning dust versus a variable synchrotron effect?
Okay, so when we do this template fitting, we use this 408 megahertz template as a tracer of synchrotron emission. So anything which is correlated, if it is synchrotron, it will go into this 408 megahertz correlated emission. It will not come into this 353 correlated emission. So in this 353 correlated emission is all dust. So it
Well, I mean, can you get back to the spectral plot that you showed us a couple of slides before?
which one?
Okay, just look, yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we have our spinning dust curve on the left there.
Yes.
But I could also add a steeper, in principle I could add a steeper synchrotron component, right? Which had the right amplitude to rise up
Yes.
at around 30 gigahertz.
Yeah, so if it is synchrotron, it will be correlated with 408 megahertz observation. So when I cross correlate, it will go into 408 correlate emission, and it will not pick up something which is correlated with 353
Yeah,
gig.
so you're seeing the particles all diffuse through the galaxy very rapidly, and they're all mixed together.
So as you know, WMAP for a long time said that what was interpreted as spinning dust was actually variable index synchrotron. And then it took a while for the spinning dust thing to get locked in, and that was actually due to the number of experiments. And so it's had quite a history, and now it's pretty widely accepted that it's spinning dust, so I don't think there's that much controversy.
There's just a lot of correlation with the other dust component, basically.
Yep.
And actually, the spectral signature is nicely mapped out, so it actually really is a bump in immediate. I mean, you don't see it there, but if you separate components, you see a nice bump around.
Yeah, but you're true that the shape is exactly same as the synchrotron spectrum with a steepening like power spectrum. So by the spectral shape, it is very difficult to say, separate out what is it is spinning dust or the synchrotron. But if you do template fitting, we are sure that it is not synchrotron. So what we are getting is the mean spectrum and the mean parameters, mean SEDs of the dust emission. Now we are doing this not the mean, but doing by pixel. So this is the one of the Planck results which is going to come out. So for each pixel, we measure what is the, so we fit this analytical form, and we measure what is the component which is spinning dust and what is the related to the thermal dust. And you can see that morphologically there is a huge like a strong correlation between the spinning dust and the thermal dust, which is expected from this curve. And in this model also they fit for the synchrotron, so so it will go into the synchrotron amplitude part. Okay, so next is the SED of the polarized dust. So we can do the same trick, and we use what is called 353 gigahertz as a template for dust emission, and we cross correlate with frequencies below 353 gigahertz. So what we are finding is the spectral index of dust. So the mean value is slightly different, so it's like 1.59, which is slightly different from the mean value from the intensity what we got. And we can also extrapolate the same analysis to till like 20 gigahertz. And this time we don't use, because we don't have a good synchrotron template, so we cannot separate out the synchrotron and the dust part. So what it is picking up is basically coming the part which is correlated with the synchrotron emission. So from this analysis, what we are coming out is that there is a synchrotron emission which is correlated with the dust emission, and we get the spectrum of the synchrotron emission, which is like minus 3.04. And in this analysis, we also include the WMAP data, so you can see that WMAP and Planck is very much consistent. Also, what we can do is at high frequency, so the intensity spectrum has a spinning dust part and the thermal dust part, and for polarization we have a synchrotron and the thermal dust part. So we can look at the high frequency channels, and based on the model we can subtract the part which is correlated with the spinning dust or the synchrotron and compute the direct ratio of the polarization intensity and the normal intensity. So what we get is the polarization fraction, so it is normalized to 1. So depending on if it is like 10% polarized, this scale just goes up at like 10%. So what we are seeing is almost constant, and then there is a dip, and this dip is basically there is a small difference in the spectral index between intensity and polarization. And so now we are trying to model this based on the like the realistic dust models. So this is the spectral properties of the dust emission. Now we switch to the statistical properties of the dust emission, which is in recent time it's very interesting. So it comes out from the BICEP2 results. So BICEP2, this picture is not very clear. So it observed the 5% of the sky in the southern galactic, in the south, close to the south, and they used just 1% of the sky to analyze the to get to the primordial B modes. So they look at 153 gigahertz, and they have a resolution of 30 arc-minute, and they get this spectrum. So this is the BB or the primordial power spectrum, and they can fit with a spectrum which is R is equal to 0.2 plus the lensing contribution. So when this result came out, there was a lot of questions, and one of the question is what is the fraction of measured B modes is coming from this polarized dust emission. So in BICEP analysis, they assume that there is no dust. So what we are measuring is coming from primordial cosmic microwave background. But this dust particles, which is trying to align themselves with the local magnetic field, they also produce CMB B modes. And
Pretty interesting image of the primordial universe.
yeah, I took it from the website. Yeah. So yeah, it is. I took it from some website. I had to cite that. Okay. So the thing is that we need to separate out these two parts. What is part which is coming from primordial part and which is coming from our own galaxy.
And then we have little dipoles of the galactic dust. So that's what
Okay. Okay. So just to give us some sensitivity comparison. So this R is equal to 0.2 is basically we're looking for signal which is less than 200 nanokelvin, and the BICEP sensitivity for 1% of the sky it is 0.0 or 87 nanokelvin per degree, and Planck has a sensitivity at 143 gigahertz is 0.46. So Planck is like 5 times worse than BICEP for 1% of the sky, but with Planck we have full sky coverage. So if we use say 30 or 40% of the sky, we have the same sensitivity as the BICEP. And for comparison, we just put the cake analysis number here. So if it is R is equal to 0.2, if it is that bright, we can detect directly in this Planck 143 gigahertz channel by looking at not at 1% of the sky, but say 40% of the sky. So, so the motivation of this study is to study the statistical properties of the dust emission, and we use the same formalism as the people do. So with Planck, we have multi-frequency channels. So we can look at 143 gigahertz. If it is R is equal to 0.2, we can get it. But we also have 353 gigahertz channel. So we can study what is the dust amplitude at this 353 gigahertz and how much it is contributing there. So we use the same formalism like the power spectrum. Even if the dust is non-Gaussian signal, we use the same properties. And trying to characterize all the statistical properties of the dust emission. So the first result came out is this. So what we compute is the CLEE and the CLBB of the dust power spectrum. So we look at the sky between 30, 50, and 70% of the sky, and the same here. So this is the amplitude of the dust at 353 gigahertz. And this is the level of the CMB. So for E, it is totally predicted by the best fit lambda CDM parameters. And for BB, this is R is equal to 2.2. So at 353 gigahertz, the dust is totally dominant compared to the CMB. And we want to, because at 353 we have a very good signal to noise ratio about dust. So we want to characterize everything at 353 and extrapolated this spectrum to 150 gigahertz and see what is the amount of dust there. So the idea is to characterize the spectral shape of this, which is power law here. And what is the amplitude? So you can see that for CMB is a statistically isotropic and Gaussian signal. So independent of whatever fraction you look at the sky, you get the same power spectrum. But it's not the same for dust. So depending on if it is 30 or like 70% of the sky, we have different amplitude. So we need some tools to, or some measure to measure what is the amplitude of the dust emission. And next thing which is interesting is how the amplitude of E and BB is. So that if because the BB signal is lower than the E, so in the faintest region of the sky, we can actually use the E, if we know if the ratio is kind of constant, we can use the amplitude of E to say what is the CLBB there. And see what is the frequency dependence of dust so that we can extrapolate this to any frequency, or say 150 gigahertz. So I start with the spectrum. So we assume that it has a power law model with L to the power alpha, and what is fitted here is the alpha slope. So this is a different fraction of the sky from 20% to 80% of the sky. And this amplitude is fitted at a normalization L range of 80. So you can see that E and BB has a spectrum slope which is very much constant, which is close to minus 2.4. So once we know what is the spectrum, we can see how to model this amplitude. So what is plotted is the amplitude versus the mean I353. So we take patches, which is like 30 to 80% of the sky, and we compute what is the average intensity in that region. And you can see that it follows nicely this relation. So basically, if you know what is the I353 intensity, and the amplitude is just this power law. So we know what is the amplitude, we know what is the slope. What we interested is the ratio of E to B spectrum, and it is what you're finding is independent of the sky fraction we look at, it is very much constant. It's like 0.5. So the polarized dust emission is produced, which is half in B modes as compared to E modes. It's unlike CMB, where the CMB B modes is much smaller than the E modes. And the last part, which is the frequency dependence. So we take this 4 frequency, 100 to 353, and we do all this cross spectrum and trying to fit the amplitude spectrum. So you can see that it follows a modified black body spectrum, and it has a same spectral properties which is reported earlier when we work with the real space. So this is globally, we know like from 30 to 80% of the sky how the dust behaves. But can we extrapolate all this information to small patches, like bicep kind of patches? So the bicep patches are like 400 square degree areas, and we study the same properties so we take bicep kind of patches for latitude greater than 35, which is high latitude sky, and study the same properties. So what is plotted here is the amplitude as a versus of I353. So this line is basically the fit, which is I353 to the power 1.9. So you can see there are a lot of scatter, but basically if we look at any patch of the sky and if we know what is the intensity, we can predict what is the amplitude of the dust emission. We can also look at E to B ratio on this 352 sky patches. So there are a lot of scatter, but the average value is very close to what we found in the like big patches, which is close to half of the, it's like 0.5. And then what we do is we assume that the spectral dependence is true, and we extrapolated the 353 amplitude to the amplitude at 150 gigahertz. So what is plotted here is something called RD, is basically the ratio, the contribution of dust in the BICEP kind of fields. So if RD is 0.2, it means the CMB is at the same level as the dust. So these blue regions are basically the clean region of the sky where the dust polarization is very small, and this is the BICEP patch. So this maps basically gives a guidance that which are the clean regions of the sky in terms of dust polarization. But we don't have very good sensitivity, so even if in the cleanest patch we have a RD value of 0.01, but it has a huge standard deviation, like error bar, which is 0.06.
And the BICEP region is what, at 0.2?
It's difficult to say. This is the blue region, which is around here. So this is in log RD. So this is 10 and this is -2. So this is in between. Yeah, I'm coming to that. So okay, so I just go back to the BICEP results. So this is a measurement. So they are fitting this with a spectrum of R of 0.2 from the primordial B modes and the lensing part. And in the first version of the paper, they construct a model based on the Planck data, and they assume that the polarization fraction is 5%, and by cross-correlating the 150 and 353 gigahertz, they get to the level of what is the level of dust emission in this BICEP field, so which is shown in the blue pink point. But in this figure, in this image, the CIB is not subtracted off, but if you subtract the CIB, the polarization fraction goes up like almost double. So it becomes not 5 to 11%. So this is the BICEP patch here. So this is in the map level, but in the power spectrum level, this amplitude goes like factor of 4, and then it starts becoming comparable to the BICEP measurement. So what we do is we take in this paper we take this measurement at 30% of the sky, and so this is at 353 gigahertz. So if we go from 30 to 1% of the sky, it goes just like this, and then there is a big extrapolation from 353 gigahertz to 150 gigahertz. So there is a magic number like 625. If you divide by that number, you get the amplitude of the dust emission. So it is comparable to R of 0.2 from the CMB. So in this paper, we publish the amplitude of dust emission in 3 big bins. So the blue points is basically coming from from the dust emission, and this solid line is the prediction from R is equal to 0.2 from coming from just the CMB. So if you look at the shape of the spectrum, it's very difficult to say what is the CMB and what is the dust, because both of them has the same spectral dependency, which has a, like for dust is a power law model with L to the power minus 2.4 spectrum, and for the CMB it has this shape. So unless we resolve this in a like very, very finely or with high resolution, it's very difficult to say what is the whether it is coming from CMB or it is coming from dust. And also, we also have a big error bar, because at 353 gigahertz, we just have a detection which is like 4.5 sigma, and then there was some modeling error, like uncertainty when we extrapolate from 353 to 153 gigahertz. So this box can shift anywhere, and it's very difficult to say what is the level of dust in this bicep field. This is just showing the points. But there is one strong hint that in the bicep field there are a lot of dust emission is there, not doing just at one frequency, but doing at all the frequency till 100 gigahertz. So we measure all this cross spectrum, and it follows the modified black body spectrum. So the CMB spectrum is different from the dust spectrum. So by measuring the spectral dependency, we can see that there are a lot of dust in this bicep field. But the amplitude, there is a uncertainty, and we don't know how much is the absolute number. So we measure all these statistical properties, and we don't know how to interpret them, like the spectral dependency, E to B ratio, and other stuff, like the amplitude, which depends on I to the power 1.9. So now what we are slowly getting into is trying to interpret all the results. So one is the E to B ratio, and the key ingredient we are finding is the correlation between the matter and the magnetic field. So this is a key information that actually both are coupled together. So in one of the paper, Planck 32, which came out last year, we actually quantify how the matter and the magnetic field is coupled. So I'm just showing here the intensity and Q and U maps. So visually you can see there is not very much correlation between the polarization maps and the intensity. But once we filter these maps, so there are a lot of filamentary structures. So once you remove the large scale background, there is a very good correlation between what we see in intensity and Q and U maps. So what we are measuring in this paper is if there is a ISM structure. So how this ISM, what is the correlation between ISM structure and the local magnetic field, and it is derived by this angle theta. And here we are showing the histogram of this angle theta. So you can see that on the structures, the matter and the magnetic field is very much correlated, and it has a dispersion which is like 25 degree or something.
So that angle is the angle between the dust grain.
Not the dust grain, if there is a filamentary structures. Yeah, and the angle with the local magnetic field, which is derived from the polarization angle. And it is very much correlated, and it has this distribution basically. So to interpret this, so there is some flattening of this distribution which is coming from the projection effect, which need to be taken into account, but largely it is very much correlated. And just for example, I'm showing just one filament. So this is one of the brightest filament in the sky. And you can see that the filament shows up in E map and not in B map, and there is a strong correlation with the intensity. So these filaments can explain basically the correlation of TE coming from dust, and it might also explain the EB ratio of 0.5. So we are investigating this possibility.
Is the topology of the filament is an extended linear object?
Yes.
Lead you to prefer E?
Yes.
Because of that?
No. So if the magnetic field is aligned, it will produce more E than the B modes inside the filament.
I'm just saying is the geometrical explanation for this problem is E over B?
Yeah, like this filament, you see it in E modes, but not in B modes.
I get the message. It's just trying to understand what it is.
Yep. Okay. So once we understand the stress.
So let's go back to that point. So that's a function of intensity of emission. Is that not the right interpretation of this? So low intensity, it's not such a, the E and the B are closer, And for high intensity, the E is dominant over the B. Is that correct? I don't want to put words in your mouth. I just want to know if that's what the interpretation is.
No, it depends on how the magnetic field is aligned with the direction of the filament. So that gives the E to B ratio. It's nothing to do with low intensity or high intensity.
And what is the physics behind the alignment?
That we don't know. It is observed in the sky. At least in this histogram, you can see that there is an alignment there. Okay, so what next? So what we are doing is now is Planck and Bicep. They are sharing the data, and we are doing the joint analysis to constrain how much is the value of R. So I'm not going to give you the results, but basically we are taking the Bicep and the cake array now and cross-correlating with the Planck data. So in very simple terms, what we measure at 353 gigahertz is the CL of dust, but we don't have a much sensitivity. So we measure it with a low signal to noise ratio. In Bicep, with 100 and 150 cross correlation, they measured the CMB plus some part of dust where we don't know these alpha coefficients. And if you take cross correlate 150 and 353 gigahertz, it has intermediate signal to noise ratio. So basically, we can take these two frequencies and subtract dust part and get to the level of CMB. And it is only possible if you have two data available. So you cannot just do it with 353 gigahertz. And this alpha coefficient is basically the ratio of dust at 100 and 353 gigahertz. So if you know what is the beta and the temperature, you can compute what is the alpha coefficient. And if you have a handle on these numbers, you can get the level of CMB.
Are you going to be doing that with beta varying with position, or just a single universal beta?
Here they are doing the likelihood analysis, like with taking the, but it's a single beta which is marginalized over, so it's not a like constant fixed number.
And isn't it better to do this in the map space instead of the blue space? Instead of the white space?
Yeah, if you have a good maps, you can do it. It's better to do it in the map. if the maps are good, yeah. But then the advantage of working with power spectrum is you cancel out a lot of noise.
You get a lot of it.
Yeah. Cannot get everything. Okay, so this is the conclusion, but this is mostly based on the angular power spectrum analysis. So first time we are measuring with Planck the angular power spectrum. We get these properties, what is the slope, what is the amplitude, and what is the E to B ratio. We get the frequency dependence of the dust emission. And the statistical properties what we derive is basically preserved even if like 1% of the sky. So it's like a Gaussian CMB signal. So once you know all these properties, you can extrapolate to any region, any frequency of the sky. And basically what we're coming at, there is no sky regions where we can neglect this polarized dust emission. And we need to do some kind of component separation or clean the dust to get to the CMB. So there is no clean window in the sky. And before drawing any conclusion on Bicep 2 results, we need to take into account this polarized dust emission, which we are doing. The paper is ready. I think it will go into submit this week or something. Thank you.
Are there more questions?
Well, in that question, in the future, will Bicep be able to self-calibrate on this, or will it continue to be Planck? Like the Bicep 3?
No, if they get a good dust frequency channel, say 220 or 240 gigahertz, then they don't need.
Bicep 3, what its frequency coverage is, et cetera.
It's going, I think it's going to have something in the 200 range, but you really can't get 353 around. So people are going to sort of, well, 280 has always been problematical on the ground, but at least it's been used. 220 is often used, so you don't get as much of a lever arm. I mean, the thing about the 353, so for a very long time, the Planck 353 will be the go-to map in order to do comparison. And then one shouldn't underestimate the impact of that beautiful mosaic that everybody has taken extremely seriously in the CMB community.
Right.
That shows, the RD.
Where to look?
Yeah. And also the variants. I mean, there are two versions of
Yeah,
this. There's that map with RD, and then there's another map that shows the fluctuations, which is actually very important.
So if Bicep has used that region instead of this.
This region,
Yeah.
yeah. You get a low amount of dust there. But there is a big error bar there, so it's you're not sure
Point
that.
out that spider, which is still in the air, is more or less like this, so it covers that region. I mean, it was launched around just at the cusp of New Year's Eve. It's still flying.
All right, we can continue this upstairs.